regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change. We also won regime change. We have a regime change like nobody thought was possible.
Deadline that President Trump has set, 8 p.m., has threatened to destroy a civilization. How does an investor process that? Is it a bigger upside risk or downside risk?
Remember those protests in Iran at the start of the year? The protests that Iran's authorities said were foreign-backed? The ones that CIA officials themselves said Mossad were involved in? The New York Times admits that the riots that spread across Iran in January were done so by Israel's Mossad. The riots were triggered by decades of US sanctions on Iran, which impacted Iran's currency.
They have riots in the street. They have horrible inflation, the worst in the world.
President Trump told me the United States sent guns to the Iranian protesters. He tells me we sent them a lot of guns.
What we have done is created a dollar shortage in the country. There was a run on the bank. The central bank had to print money. The Iranian currency went into free fall. Inflation exploded, and hence we have seen the Iranian people out on the street.
The hybrid warfare model of sanctions, sabotage, and now all-out war was meant to decapitate Iran completely.
As long as the Israelis have the agenda of Greater Israel, the conflict cannot end.
That was seen on the uniform of an Israeli soldier. Look closely. What do you see? You see Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Egypt, and a small part of Turkey. And next to it is written, the Promised Land. What does this mean? Are Israel only fighting a defensive war? Or do they have a hidden agenda to continue to expand their land by taking over the countries around them?
I have made it clear to the Israeli leadership that I do not support their expansionist ideas. The indigenous people of that land have rights that cannot be ignored. We must find a fair solution, not one dictated by any single group.
תהיה רגל מדינית מסיימת בעזה שתרחיב את גבולותינו, תהיה רגל מדינית מסיימת בלבנון שתרחיב את גבולותינו על הליטני לגבולות ברי הגנה, תהיה רגל מדינית מסיימת בסוריה כתר החרמון והחיץ לפחות.
هم مصممين على إزالة سوريا ولبنان من الخريطة، تكون حدودهم على تركيا، أنا نقول هذا الكلام وتشوف أنت تحقق بعهدنا ولا بعهد أولادنا، لكن للأسف سيتحقق.
So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bridges over the Litani River that have been destroyed. What is this? This is an effort to separate southern Lebanon from the rest of the country. I mean, here you see effectively an entire village that is just completely destroyed, blown up by the Israelis. You now have a level of mass displacement in Lebanon that approaches some of the worst conflicts in the world.
Everyone we've spoken to has said this was a family block full of families, children, ordinary people.
In an Israeli radio interview on Monday, Smotrich said the bombardment of Lebanon needs to end with a different reality entirely, which includes a, quote, change of Israel's borders.
Israel, by the way, bombing Beirut 100 times in, how long was it? Was it an hour?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. You know, and I don't want to, guys, I don't want to be, I don't always want to be like down on Israel. I'm starting to get this nagging feeling that Israel doesn't really want this ceasefire. They don't want it to work. They don't want it to work.
I mean, that New York Times story the other day is guaranteed to make it clear to huge numbers of Americans that the Israelis led us by the nose into this war. And there were all sorts of people in the national security establishment who were flashing orange lights, if not a red light. But why did we go? Because the Israelis convinced President Trump that it was a good idea.
אנחנו לא משתמשים בפצצת ניוטרון, זה נקרא. זה סוג של פצצת אטום שלא פוגעת במבנים, היא הורגת את כל האנשים באופן מוגבל בכל המקומות.
אני הבנתי שאתה...
השר בן גביר, מה אתה אומר על... מנה ראשון, תן לו.
אני הבנתי...
בן גביר לא רוצה להיכנס לו.
This is a crucially important military operation, war, call it what you want, peace mission. And we ought to be celebrating the success of our military, unifying around our military and our commander-in-chief, and urging them to complete the task.
And by that time, we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today. And he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
The 3 who died are Indonesian, but there were also a number of Ghanaian peacekeepers who were injured when an Israeli tank shell landed on their position a couple of weeks ago. Now, UNIFIL investigated that. They found that, yes, it was, in fact, the Israelis.
You've said Iranians would be mad if you stopped these attacks, but why would they want you to blow up their infrastructure, to cut off their power? Wouldn't that be punishing Iranians for the actions of the regime?
Please keep bombing. Bombs that are dropping near their homes. Please keep bombing. Do it. And these are people that are living where the bombs are exploding. And when we leave and we're not hitting those areas, they're saying, please come back, come back, come back. These are the people. We have a plan, because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to. We don't want that to happen.
President Trump telling Fox News over the weekend that Iran isn't even negotiating anymore about their nuclear program. The president said, quote, the big thing is they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They're not even negotiating that point. It's so easy. That's already been conceded.
I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case.
اصفهان هستش جایی که 2 هواپیمای ترابری نظامی رژیم تروریستی آمریکا صبح امروز در منطقه هدف قرار گرفتند و
If you think only 13 people have died as a consequence of this month-long bombing campaign, you don't understand the world that we're in now.
If they strike refineries, compounds, we're going into global depression, not just recession. We're going into global depression.
That question of this being a global energy shortage, because I showed this chart just the other day, asking the question whether this is the biggest disruption in history.
The market is thinking, okay, Trump's going to taco, the strait's going to open up, we go back to normal, oil falls to $60. Let me spend a few moments to tell you why we think those views are absolutely wrong, why we think there is a new normal, meaning a much higher floor price, and the likelihood of an imminent price spike in the coming days, 2 weeks. One of the reasons why there's so much complacency in the market right now. People are saying, look, we're not seeing the shortages. You know, Strait's been closed for a month and a bit. If we would have seen it, we would have seen it by now. And that's just so unbelievably naive and ignorance.
We have lost roughly 7 to 11% of the world's oil, and it's supply side. What does this mean for markets? The world, this is going to sound hyperbolic, but it's not. It's literal math. It's guaranteed balance, double entry bookkeeping, math, supply chain reality. The world economy cannot survive a 7 to 11% loss of oil supply. It will not survive. We can debate, is Europe going to go first and collapse? Is Southeast Asia going to go first and collapse? Will America collapse first? But the global economy is a certainty. It will collapse.
The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement.
Trump came in and said, I can get a better deal, and he ripped it up. And he didn't get a better deal. And then he went into that country at the request of another country's leader, and he spent $50 billion and killed thousands of civilians and at least 13 American soldiers, and hundreds of American soldiers are injured. We've heard our bases, we've heard our radar. People hate America now. We had a president say that we're going to destroy an entire civilization. That's like if I came home and I held a gun to my wife's head and I said, for 13 hours, I'm going to say, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to blow your brains out. Just kidding. We'll talk about it again in 2 weeks. That does not make you a good negotiator. That doesn't make you a good guy. It makes you psychotic, and he's the leader of the free world, and everyone knows that now. Okay. So no, this is not some winning strategy.
All right, I'm not sure why we're all still having trouble with this. Let's try it again from the top. This is a victory for the U.S. because our goal from day one was for Iran to open the strait that didn't close till after we attacked, which was completely controlled by their military we had total dominance over. And it was a waterway that we could have taken over, but instead asked for help that we didn't need, but we'll remember that our allies did not give us. All because of the negotiating power of a FIFA Peace Prize recipient's threat to annihilate a civilization in order to liberate them from a regime that changed, which was not our goal, but we will take credit for, from an old man who hates us to his younger son who hates us for those reasons and that we killed his father. And while it is not clear the status of Iran's nuclear capabilities that we obliterated last year, but were going to be a problem in 2 weeks, one thing is for sure. They now have more money and control of the strait than they had when they made the old deal that we ended because it was terrible. Now, I think that is enough about authoritarian propagandistic regimes. Does anybody have any questions about the Trump Library golden statue?
Young man.